Welcome everybody to Learn to Block, Knit, and Crochet projects. My name is Dana. I am the editor of Fave Crafts, and I'll be emceeing today's class with Hortense from Knitting with Chopsticks. A couple housekeeping things before we get started. We are recording today's class, and you will get a copy of the recording in about 24 hours to your email. So keep an eye out for an email from Zoom. You can use the Q&A feature to ask questions or the chat. Either is fine. The chat sometimes moves quickly, so it's a little easier to single out questions in the Q&A feature. I mentioned Fave Crafts. Fave Crafts is a website that shares free craft tutorials from all over the internet. We have a variety of free email newsletters broken down by interest, like Everyday Crochet, Trash to Treasure, Faithfully Homemade, and more. And you can sign up for any of those newsletters at favecrafts.com. All right, and I want to thank our sponsor for today's class, as well as introduce our instructor. So today's class is sponsored by Knitting with Chopsticks. Blocking is only one step in your entire pattern, so you can take it to the next level with the complete pattern reading course, Proficient in Patterns. If you've been wanting to follow crochet patterns, but whenever you sit down to make it happen, you're immediately overwhelmed, this course is what you need. Proficient in Patterns is an immersive instant access training workshop that will walk you through reading crochet patterns step by step. And are you ready to finally read crochet charts and graphs without the headache of following complicated written instructions? You can sign up for Conquer Charts and Graphs. Master working up patterns even if they're in a foreign language. Plus, learn to make your own charts with this course. You can use the promo code FAVE, F-A-V-E, for either or both of these courses and get 20% off. And I will drop the links to the courses as well as that promo code in the chat in just a minute. All right, I'm going to introduce Hortense and then we'll get started with the content of today's webinar. So Hortense is the designer behind Knitting with Chopsticks. Knitting with Chopsticks was created as a way to give back and share easy knitting and crochet patterns with beginners everywhere. Hortense's goal is to break down patterns so they're simple enough for you to create exactly what you want, the way you want it. She's an engineer by trade and a crafter by passion, which means all of her patterns have an extreme attention to detail, thorough explanations, and step-by-step pictures. When she's not working on a yarn project, you might find her diving at the beach or rewatching Grey's Anatomy for the 100th time and snacking on chocolate. She is from Belgium after all. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Hortense, for being here today. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and to teach this class. If it's okay with you, I'm just gonna share my screen so everyone can see the ebook. Which I'm going to use as a base to teach this course. So this is the ebook that I was talking about that you can download from the link in the chat. So today I want to teach you everything I know about blocking for knitting and crochet. So blocking is the same whether you knit or crochet, just the same process, same steps, same everything. So you might have read in your patterns just at the end, like carefully block your project or just block 2 measurements. And that's basically all a pattern will say about blocking. I used to ignore that for like years and years and just start enjoying my project as soon as it was done or like my ends were not even woven in. Although it's very simple, it's often overlooked by new knitters and crocheters. But trust me, it makes a big difference and it's really a pity to just skip it. So I want to convince you today to give it a try and hopefully you'll see the difference and how much it makes your projects look more professional and polished. So that's what we're going to talk about today. To go a bit over the content of the course, first I'm going to explain what blocking is, why you should block your project, when you should block your project, what you need to block your projects, and then 3 different techniques. And then we'll go over the pros and cons of each blocking technique. A quick word about whether you need to block each and every single project, and then some frequently asked questions and of course your questions. I will keep all the questions for the end just to make it easy, but don't hesitate to put them in the chat or the Q&A as Dana mentioned. So first off, what is blocking? So blocking is when you apply water and heat to your project to help it take its best shape. So the process is exactly the same whether you knit or crochet. I like to compare it to like blow drying your hair. You're basically applying water and heat or like steam to put it in the shape you want. But it's not just changing the shape of your hair, it's also like making it nice and smooth and flat and flowy and drapey and everything. So that's exactly what blocking does with your project. So it's gonna fix the shape and sizing, but also make it nice and smooth and flowy and drapey and all the pretty things we like. So if we go over the different advantages in detail, first off, it's gonna help even your tension. So you might be a very experienced knitter or crocheter or a very new one. Any case, sometimes your tension is not perfect. Some stitches are a bit looser or a bit tighter. When you block your project, it's gonna make that disappear and it's gonna really even out your fabric so that all the irregularities disappear. It's gonna open up your lace stitches and eyelets. It's gonna highlight any texture you're using. So whether you use cables, puff stitches, bubbles, ribbing, any of those will be even prettier after blocking. It helps to shape your project. So if you want specific measurements, it's gonna help fix that. Or like anything that you want to get like perfectly square, any edges perfectly flat and perfectly straight. It's gonna help with that. It's gonna give drape, shine, and softness to your fabric. So it doesn't only improve the look of your stitches, but also like the entire fabric, the feel, the drape, the shine. And depending on the yarn composition, the results might be different. So natural fibers, whether animal or plant-based, take the blocking process much better than any synthetics, which are much harder to block, but we'll see a bit further down how we can still get some great results with some of the techniques. So I wanted to show you a very quick video to show you the difference before after blocking. I hope you guys can see the video I just pulled up. Let us know otherwise. So that's a sweater I made that you can see like before. You can barely see what the lace shaping is supposed to be. And after blocking, like
I don't see the video on my screen.
Okay.
Yeah, a few folks are typing that they don't see it as well.
How do I do that? Sorry about that.
That's
Can you see
okay.
it now?
Yep, looks great.
So that's the before. You can barely see what the lace shaping is supposed to look like. Let's block it in high speed. And that's after blocking. So there it's drying. And after you can see like the lace is much nicer. You can clearly see the flowers. So for me, it's totally worth it. I hope this example shows you that. Let me just go back to the course. So let's have a talk about when you should block your projects. So if the pattern doesn't mention specifically when in the course of the project you should do it, I like to follow this rule of thumb. So if my project is made in several different pieces, I will block each piece before assembling them. And if I make my project in like one piece without seaming, I will usually block it at the end. Sometimes you have to do a bit of a mix of both. Some projects you will make different pieces and then assemble them and then still crochet or knit like the collar or some pockets or things like that. So then I like to block it in two times basically. So I will block the separate pieces, assemble it, and then block again, focusing especially on the new parts. And blocking it after seaming also helps like the seams to block and to flatten out and be less bulky and visible. So that's also a plus. So what do you need to actually block your projects? You actually don't need so much material, but you will need some sort of a blocking board. So you can see on the picture here, the most common boards are like these foam boards that you can assemble to take the shape of your project. And they often have like these lines that will help you keep your edges straight, and like each square is 1 inch. So it's very easy to follow measurements with these. You can use the same ones without the grids that are usually much cheaper, that are sold for like baby play mats. Just a little trick if you want to spare some money. But if you don't want to buy like the proper blocking tools, you can DIY it at home. I've done it for years. You just need any sort of mat that you're happy to put some pins in and you don't mind basically getting damaged. So you can use like a foam board, a yoga mat, an old mattress, anything like that. You just put a towel and pin straight into it. It works perfectly fine. So you need something to pin with. So usually we use these stainless steel T-pins that are very easy, and you can find them on any like Amazon or any online shop like that. They don't rust and they don't bend too easily, which makes them very easy to use. I've tried DIYing this by using my husband's nails. Not a good idea. They rusted and my project was destroyed. So be careful if you want to try some alternatives, that it's something that doesn't rust with the water and heat. So these T-pins work perfectly fine. And then another option that many people use are like these knit blockers. They're basically just like a 4 or 5 centimeters, and they have like different pins on them. I have a few here. You can see they just have like a bunch of pins that you can just at the same time put in, so you don't have to pin each one individually. That's the main advantage. They're really convenient when you want to pin anything that's like straight edges. But if you're doing like a shawl or something that's like a round shape, I would not recommend them, because then it's really hard to get a nice round shape. So then traditional T-pins work better. So depending on the method you're going to use, you're going to need a few other things. You're going to need something to soak your project in, so a large bucket or your sink, or I sometimes even use my bathtub because it's just there for bigger projects. You're going to need a clean towel. Any sort of towel that will absorb water works fine. Depending on the size of your project, it might need to be quite big. But just be aware that sometimes your yarn, the colors can bleed. So you might get stains on that towel that you were not expecting. So I wouldn't use your new favorite fancy towel, but anything else will work fine. Then you will need a source of steam. So you can either use your steamer or the steam function on your iron. Both work equally well. So it's really up to you and whatever you already have in house. For some of the techniques, you will need a spray bottle, just like a small gardening spray bottle with like a mist spray works perfectly fine. And then you can use some wool wash. So this is optional. I personally don't use it because I'm allergic to perfume and like laundry products, unfortunately. But you have some very nice wool washes that are specially like made to wash your handmade projects, which give them a little bit extra softness and a nice smell, which is always nice because wool doesn't always smell the best, especially when wet. So that's everything you need to block your projects. Now let's go over.
If it's okay, I have a question about, a couple of questions came in about the materials. Specifically the mat to block. Joanne is asking, do you need special foam pieces to block? So what are some of the pros and cons of different companies' products? She went on to say that she likes to use natural products and is hoping not to use foam. So what else maybe could she use instead of the standard blocking board?
So basically anything that's a bit bouncy and that you can like pin into will work fine. So like any mattress, any sort of like mat. I personally don't know of any like natural natural based product that would fit that description. But if you have like I don't know, a mattress, a couch that you don't mind pinning into, that would work.
Okay, yeah, a couple of the attendees are leaving a bunch of suggestions in the chat. Someone's saying, let's see, styrofoam board, thick cardboard, if it has the wax on
Cardboard
it.
is not a very, like, I've tried it, but it gets wet, and then it can leave like some color in your projects, which I was not very happy about. So just be careful if there's any like printing on your cardboard, that you don't want it to end up in your project.
Okay, and, somebody is suggesting, a couple folks are saying cork. Oh, plastic wrap over cardboard. Okay, cool. And then I saw a couple more questions come in about materials. Cece, hi Cece, is asking, she's saying starch is not required.
What, starch?
Yeah, she's asking if she's saying, is starch not required?
I don't know what starch is. Sorry, English is my third language. I don't know that word.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it's probably not required, but.
Your English is amazing. I'm so impressed. That's your third language. Wow. Cool. And then let's see. A couple more questions. Oh my goodness, a bunch of questions are coming in. I hope it's okay. Since so many of them, so many of them are related to the materials. So this is related to the blocking board in a way. Victoria's asking, how would you block a king-sized blanket?
So I usually do it on my bed, because that's like the biggest space I have. If you're like, we'll go over the different techniques and I'll come back to this one. Otherwise, I think it's going to be confusing. But depending on which technique you use, you can easily do it on your bed, basically.
Right. Okay. And then the last question I think I'll ask for now. Becca's asking.
Sorry.
Becca's asking, what do you do with cotton dishcloths? How will they stay flat after using them?
So anything you use and you block, once you wash it, I always lay it flat to dry, whether dishcloths or anything else. Of course, your dishcloths are getting wet and dried many, many times. So they might get a bit out of shape, but usually if you just let them dry flat, they stay nice.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. I think that is all the questions for now.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So let's go back to the 3 different techniques for blocking. So first of all, we have finger blocking. That's where you just like use your fingers to like stretch your fabric and like put it into place however you want. So that's not like a super effective technique, but it works well if you just have some eyelets you want to open up quickly. But it usually doesn't like last in time because you just do it with your hands. So there's nothing to like fix it in the fiber. A second technique is wet blocking, which is my favorite. You have 2 different ways to do that. So first up, you can use the soaking technique. So for this one, you're first going to take your project and put it into some water, either a big bucket or your sink or bathtub, any big container where you can put it in and let it soak. Make sure that it soaks for a little time to make sure that like all the fibers have like absorbed water and that all the air is out. So I like to like squish it a bit like this so that I take all the air bubbles out to make sure like all my fiber is wet. This is where you can add the wool wash if you want to. Usually you don't need to rinse wool wash, so you can just add it in here, squish it and let it soak. And then when you take it out, it's good to go. So your next step will be to take your project out of the water. To do that, don't wrench it or don't like squeeze it too hard because you might stretch it out, which we don't want. But just like put it into a bowl and try to take some of the water out and then lay it flat on your towel. Just roll your towel and like press on it to get most of the water out without stretching your fabric. You can like do it twice with a dry section of your towel to get as much water as possible out. The only advantage is that it's going to dry faster. So if there's still some water in it and you are scared you're going to stretch it, just leave the water, it will dry at some point. So after you've done that, you just lay it flat on your foam boards or whatever mat you're using, and you just like pin it in place in the shape you want. So usually here I refer to, like, especially for garments, to like the final measurements I want. And I like to add like a lot of pins to make sure that like everything is covered, because when it dries, sometimes when your fabric is wet, sometimes it stretches out, and when it dries again, it's gonna shrink a little bit. So if you put only pins in a few spots, it might give you like arced shapes, which you don't want. So make sure you put pins like everywhere, every like 2-3 centimeters, usually I do. And especially like in any lace sections that I want to open up, I will put like extra pins to have those open up nicely. And then you just have to do the worst part, which is just waiting and letting it dry and be very, very patient, which is usually, I find, the hardest part. But it really needs to be 100% dry before you take the pins out. Otherwise, you're only half blocking it and taking half of the benefits from it, which would be a bit of a pity. So once it's completely dry, you just take the pins out and you're good to go. So that's for the soaking method. Another like wet blocking method would be spraying. So it's very similar to the soaking method, except you pin your project when it's still dry on your board, and then you're going to take your spray bottle. I usually use just like room temperature, so I'm sure I'm not going to melt or felt my project. Just spray water until your project is completely soaked, and then you let it dry. Again, be a bit patient, make sure it's completely dry before you remove your pins, and then you can go ahead and enjoy your project. So the main advantage of the spraying technique is that you're sure you're not gonna like overstretch your fabric, because when your like hand knit and hand crochet projects are wet, depending on which material it's made from, it can be like very loose and stretchy, and you can easily like overstretch it in one direction or another, and then it's really hard to put it back. Some yarns have a tendency to grow a lot, like bamboo. For those yarns, I like to use the spraying method, so I'm sure I'm not gonna end up with like a top that's 20 centimeters longer than what I want. So yeah, so that's spraying. I think Dana now has a few more things she wants to share before we continue.
That sounds great. So we will have our intermission now. It's about 11:25 a.m. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take over the screen share and discuss our upcoming classes and our share a magazine offer that we have. Bear with me just a second. I have a lot of windows open. I've got to move around. So sorry about that. All right. All right. So we've got one class that is officially coming up that we have the registration page set up for, and that is a rebroadcast of our Learn to Crochet a Christmas Ornament class. This class, you can see the picture of the ornament on the slide here. It is an ornament pouch, so it works well for a gift card holder as well. And you'll learn tapestry crochet when you follow this tutorial. It's with Tamara Kelly from Moogly Blog. And it's a very popular class, which is why we're rebroadcasting it. So get a big head start on your holiday crocheting. And you can sign up for that class at favecrafts.eventbrite.com. That class is on Tuesday, June 6th. So it's in 2 weeks at 11 a.m. Central Time. And then we always do a magazine offer for folks who attend the Fave Craft Studio Live webinars. New subscribers can get an annual subscription to the I Like Crochet and/or I Like Knitting digital magazine for $5 US. The digital magazine is completely ads-free. It's tech edited, so you know you're getting high quality patterns without errors. And you get 6 digital issues a year. The biggest benefit of signing up for the digital magazines is that you get access to every previously published pattern when you sign up. So that's a cool thing about a digital version rather than print. The magazines have been around since 2014, so we've got hundreds of patterns in the archives for you guys to browse. So I'll drop the links to sign up in the chat. So it's ilikeknitting.com/virtual23, ilikecrochet.com/virtual23. Of course, we have Hortense's stunning classes as well. I've got a lot of links to drop in the chat once we return to the webinar. So I'll go ahead and turn off my screen share again. And we can resume.
Let me share the workbook again. So we talked about 2 of the 3 techniques. We had finger blocking and wet blocking. The final technique is steam blocking. So wet blocking is really good for like natural fibers, plant-based and animal-based. So wool, cotton, bamboo, alpaca, all of that blocks really nice with wet blocking. But synthetic yarns, acrylic, polyester, and all of these don't take the wet blocking process so well. They need a bit of heat to come into shape. So that's where we have steam blocking coming in. So for steam blocking, you're going to pin your project on your board when it's dry. And then instead of spraying it with water, you're going to go over it with your steam. So you can use either a steamer or the steaming function of your iron. You're going to put it 5 to 10 centimeters. So that's 2 to 4 inches from your project. Make sure you don't go too close to your project because you can melt or felt your fabric if it's too hot, which there is no coming back from. That's the problem with steam blocking. It's a bit of a risk to damage your project, so be careful. And then make sure you have some steam go over like the entire project everywhere, especially any areas with like lace or cables or anything that needs a bit of extra blocking. You can have some extra steam there. And then you're going to let your project rest for 1 to 2 hours to make sure it's drying from the humidity from the steam. So be patient again, wait until it's like completely dry, and then you can remove your pins and enjoy your project. So steam blocking works great for all types of fabric, but as I said, it can be dangerous. If you're not careful, you can up felting your natural fibers or like melting or killing your acrylic or synthetic fibers, which wouldn't be nice. But one of the other advantages is that it's much faster than wet blocking, sorry, which makes it great for like last minute projects or last minute gifts. You don't have time to wait until it's completely drying from being completely wet. This is a great option. So now that we covered like the 3 main techniques, let's have a bit of a pro-con comparison so you can decide for each project which technique you want to use. So if we look at time investment, hand blocking is the fastest because you just up with your hands and it's done. Then you have steam blocking because you just need usually about an hour for it to be like completely dry. Then you have soaking, which takes a bit less time than spraying, but both take quite a lot of time for it to dry, depending on where you live. I used to live in Malaysia and things take forever to dry there because it's very humid. So that was not fun, but usually if you have some aircon or something, it helps. So then let's look at the risk to damage your project. So with hand blocking, you're not taking too much risk unless you really like go and stretch it like crazy. You're not gonna damage it or like overstretch your fabric, and you're definitely not gonna felt it or melt it. If you're wet blocking, the main risk is to overstretch your fabric. And with steam blocking, as we said, you risk felting natural fiber or melting or also killing synthetic fibers, which is no fun. So be careful. And then if we look at the results, so with hand blocking, you mostly have like lower results and they're mostly temporary. with wet blocking, you get great results on natural fibers, but like small results with synthetic fibers. And for steam blocking, you get pretty much good results on any type of fiber. I still think that wet blocking gives you even better results for natural fiber than steam blocking, but that's a bit of a personal opinion. A lot of people swear by steam blocking, so it depends on what you like. Give both techniques a try and see which one works best for you. So do you need to block each and every single project? So this is where I should say, yes, you should. But let's be honest, it's an extra step. It can be a burden. It takes a bit of time. And sometimes you just want to start enjoying your project directly, which I totally get. So I would say block anything that can be laid flat. Anything that has like a 3D shape, like a hat or some like home decoration things, like a basket or things like that, I usually don't block because if you block them flat, they're not meant to be flat in the end, so they can't take their final shape. If you can block them on whatever it's going to be used, like a basket, if you can like fill it in and then wet block it in its final shape, you can get some great results, and blocking can be awesome. But if you are going to block it flat, it doesn't make much sense to me. So I usually skip it there. If you're doing like any stuffed animals, amigurumi or things like that, usually you won't block them either. So if we look at a few of my projects that I blocked, didn't block, first row here are projects I didn't block. So this is like a hot pad that's made like of little crochet balls, and they're like stuffed while crocheting them. So there's no way to block them because you stuff them at the same time. These are like chair socks. Instead of like the felting pads, I like to make these little crochet socks. I wouldn't block these unless you block them on the chair, which I've done for a few that were a bit tight, just so that they fit my chair perfectly and then they don't come off too easily. So that's convenient. And then anything like hats, as I said, I usually don't block them. If you block them flat, you tend to have like a line, like a folding line, which I don't really like. So then I have a good excuse to tell myself it's okay to skip it. But if you look at some of the projects that do definitely need to be blocked, anything that has lace, I would highly recommend. Like I showed you this flower sweater, it made like it completely made the sweater to block it. If you don't block it, you don't see its flowers. You basically barely see that there's any lace. Whether knit or crochet, it's the same. Any texture or any lace, I would highly recommend blocking. And natural fibers really get an amazing drape and shine and softness through blocking. So I would definitely do that. So now if we look at some of the questions I hear most about blocking is, first off, can you block acrylic yarn? So as I've said, it's not easy. It doesn't take the blocking process very well, but steam blocking will give you some good results. So I would definitely give it a try and see if you like the end results and think it's worth it or not for you. And then do you need to block your project after each wash? So this one comes back every single time I talk about blocking. So the idea of blocking is you do it once and then you're done. You don't need to do it every time you wash your project or every time it gets wet. But anytime you wash something that you handmade, I definitely recommend to lay it flat to dry. If you hang it, it's going to overstretch. So blocking is not going to prevent that or like make your project not stretchable and not damageable. It's just going to like set the fiber memory in the shape you want. But when you wash it, just lay it flat to dry and you should be good. But you don't need to do all the pinning and all of that every time. So that's everything I have to say about blocking. And I'm happy to answer any other questions we've had.
Hey, great. Yeah, we've got a bunch of great questions. So let's see, I'll start with this one from Alice. She's asking, do you block first and then wash the items or vice versa?
No, so if you want to wash it, you can do the washing part when you soak it. So usually people just use wool wash so that it's like a 2-in-1. Otherwise, you wash it however you want and then you block it. If you want to machine wash it, I don't dare to do that, but some yarns can be machine washed. I will usually not machine wash it before I wear it the first time. So I'm like, sure, I can at least enjoy it once and take the risk after. But if you want to live dangerously, you can totally machine wash it and then block it. It doesn't matter.
Okay, great. Let's see. This one was already answered about washing it every time. You don't have to block every time you wash. Let's see. Joan is saying, is there a method you would use for knitting over others you might use for crochet? She's a knitter only.
So honestly, knitting or crochet for blocking, it's just 100% the same. It depends more on the type of yarn I'm using and the fiber it's made of than on the craft I'm doing. So I do both knitting and crochet, and I will wet block anything that will take it and steam block what doesn't take wet blocking.
Awesome. All right. I love this question from Margaret. It's so interesting. She says, if you overstretch a project and it dries, can you reverse the damage and get it back in shape?
I want to say yes, but I don't know how. Unfortunately, once it's overstretched, there's not much you can do. It's easier to stretch out something that hasn't been stretched yet than to do it the other way around. It's kind of like an elastic. If you pull on it and it breaks, it's broken. So you can always like reblock it and try to like squish the fiber and hope that it helps, but it's not gonna go 100% back.
Okay. Jane's asking, how would you block something knitted in the round?
So if it's flat, you just block it the same way you block anything else. Like a sweater or something, I just block it like flat. If it's 3D shaped or like a hat, sometimes I block my hats like using a balloon so that it's like round, like a head. Or you just put it on your head and you wait until it's dry, but that's a bit annoying.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, folks are saying, Joanne's saying, thanks so much for a thorough explanation. All right, it's a few more logistic questions that have come in. Folks are saying, will I be able to download these instructions? Yes. So if you guys are having trouble accessing the ebook link during the class, it's tricky to follow the class and look at the chat and download an ebook all at once. We'll be sending a recap email in about 24 hours that will include the link to this video, as well as every link I've dropped in the chat so far. So the ebook link you'll get, the sign up links for Hortense's other classes, and like info about our upcoming classes for Favecraft Studio Live as well. So you will be able to download that ebook after the class. Just keep an eye on your inbox for an email from Zoom. And then Hortense, this is a question hopefully you can answer. Julie's asking, will the discount codes work after this broadcast? The Fave discount code, is there a deadline on that one?
I don't remember what I've said, but I will definitely leave it up for at least 2 weeks from now. I'll check after this that it's set up correctly for this, but I would say at least 2 weeks. So it gives you time, anyone who missed a class or anyone who's thinking about it, that they can grab it.
Fantastic. Great, thank you. And then let's see. Lots of thank you comments coming in. People feel so much more confident about blocking their projects. Cece says she loves the ebook. Oh, okay. This is a great question from Colleen. Have you ever tried blocking acrylic dry with a hair dryer? She's done it with granny squares and it works well.
I haven't, but I guess it should work. You're only using heat and no steam or like water. So you probably get even better results with like a steamer to like have the water in the fabric to make it to make it relax and take its shape. But just like wet blocking is doing only the water part, I guess blow dryer is only doing the heat part. So you should still get like part of the results. But I haven't tried it. Good idea.
Awesome. Lots of thank you comments. I'm not seeing any more questions at the time. I'm going to drop the ebook link one more time in the chat. Excuse me. So if folks want to just like copy and paste that into their browser so they can get the ebook right away instead of waiting for tomorrow's email, you guys can do that. I do have one question that just came in. Annette is saying somebody had a question. It's probably like totally buried in the chat. Something about blocking for ribbing in knitting. Like, how is there anything specific, any specific instructions you would suggest for blocking ribbing in knitting?
I would say like be careful if you stretch it or not. So for example, if you're doing like ribbing for the cuffs, I always like to make sure that it's not stretched because I want my cuffs to be like tighter. That's the whole point of having ribbing there. If I have ribbing like at the bottom of my sweater, sometimes, well, I don't like my hips, so I don't like my ribbing there to tighten up. So I will on purpose stretch it out a bit. So it really depends if you want the ribbing to be like opened or stay closed to keep the stretchiness, whether you like stretch it or not when you pin it in place.
Right, awesome. Everyone says great job. They loved the class. Oh, Valerie is saying which technique, just to recap, which technique is best for cotton?
So for cotton, I would definitely wet block it. And probably I would spray block it because cotton is a bit like bamboo. It can stretch out quite a lot, which can be when you wet block it, if you're not confident, you can be scared to like overstretch it or like get crazy dimensions. So just pin it in place, dry, and then spray it so that it blocks nicely and you get all the benefits on the fabric without having your shape be possibly very strange.
Sweet. All right. Yeah, this is awesome. A few folks had said they didn't realize that like bamboo and cotton stretch so much. So
they really grow. By the way, I haven't mentioned this earlier. You should block your swatches. So swatching is a whole other topic, but to get a proper gauge swatch, you should block it because then you have like the final shape of your fabric and size. So for bamboo and cotton, if you do a gauge swatch and you don't block it and you make a project based from that, you might end up with a huge sweater or top or whatever you're making because it will grow. And the designer has taken that into account with their gauge. This gauge is given after blocking.
that is great. I didn't know that. That is so interesting. Thank you for that tidbit. A few folks are very happy too. Oh my goodness, this is so great. Oh, somebody's saying they didn't know what blocking was before this class. So that's fantastic. Lots of smiley faces, thumbs up.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Happy to have been able to teach you guys something.
So great. Yeah. Okay. I don't see any more questions at this time. So I'm going to go ahead. We've got a final slide on the slideshow. So I'll just take that. I'll share that because I want folks to visit. Oh my goodness. I think my mouse just froze. Sorry about that. Got some visuals, I think, in the way. Anyway, I want to make sure that folks who are not familiar with Knitting with Chopsticks already, you guys need to follow Hortense on her social media channels. She's got Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook. They're all Knitting with Chopsticks. And of course, visit her website and get on her newsletter. Her patterns are gorgeous. I love seeing them come through on Fave Crafts all the time. So definitely, definitely visit her site. If you are interested in learning more from Hortense, so many folks love today's class, definitely check out her courses, Proficient in Patterns and Conquer Charts and Graphs. And also, if you guys have any questions about Fave Craft Studio Live, especially, any kind of logistic, housekeeping type questions, those can come to me, and my email address is right on the screen there, dneald@primecp.com. I think that's everything. Thank you again, everybody, so much for joining. Hortense, thank you so much for presenting on this topic. It's fascinating, and so many people really loved it. So thank you so much. And until next time, everybody have a good day.
Thank you.